My boss thought I was replaceable, so I stole his biggest client right under his nose. Sounds like the plot of a Netflix drama, right? But nope, it's my life. And it's one of the boldest, most terrifying, and most satisfying things I've ever done. I worked at Wellington & Co., a mid-sized marketing firm with big dreams and even bigger egos. And at the center of that ego storm was my boss, Richard Harris. Harris was the type of guy who strutted around the office like a king, except his crown was a Bluetooth headset and his throne was a squeaky leather chair that made this awful sound every time he leaned back. His philosophy? Simple. Everyone is replaceable. He said it so often, it might as well have been printed on the company mugs. Don't forget, he'd announced in meetings, I can have a dozen fresh graduates in here tomorrow doing your jobs for half the price. Real confidence booster, right? But here's the kicker. I wasn't just some new hire. I'd been there for 3 years, long enough to know every client inside out, especially Silverline Industries. They weren't just a client. They were the client. Millions in revenue. The reason Harris drove his shiny black BMW while I was stuck with a rusty old Corolla. And guess who ran their account? Me. Not Harris, not anyone else, just me. But every time we nailed a campaign, Harris would swoop in like a vulture, he'd stand in front of Silverline's executives, smile his perfect fake smile, and say, "This is the kind of brilliance you get when you work with my firm." Meanwhile, I was the one pulling all-nighters, drinking terrible coffee, and fixing problems he didn't even know existed. One time, I presented a campaign strategy at Silverline's office. I'd spent 2 weeks perfecting it. The room was silent after I finished. Then their VP of marketing, Mr. Collins, said, "That was impressive. You really understand our brand." Before I could even respond, Harris clapped his hands and said, "That's what we do here at Wellington & Co., always delivering excellence." I swear, I almost choked. Back at the office, my desk neighbor Janet leaned over and whispered, "You're basically his shadow. You do the work, he does the strutting." She wasn't wrong, and each time it happened, the resentment grew. The breaking point came one Monday morning. Harris called me into his office. He leaned back in his squeaky chair, chewing on the cap of a pen like he was some wise philosopher. "You've done solid work, but don't forget, you're replaceable. If you walked out today, I'd have someone in your chair by tomorrow morning." That hit me harder than I expected. Not because it wasn't true. Companies replace people all the time, but because of how casually he dismissed 3 years of my life. That night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily, thinking, replaceable, huh? What if I'm the only reason Silverline even stays? That thought became an itch, and once it started, I couldn't ignore it. I started paying attention differently, watching Harris more closely, seeing how often he slipped up, late replies, over-promises, missed details. Things Silverline noticed but tolerated because they trusted me to fix them. And slowly, I began shifting the spotlight. I built more personal connections with Silverline, remembered birthdays, sent small thank you notes, cracked jokes during calls. One evening after a late meeting, Collins pulled me aside. "You know, you're the one holding this together. Harris, he's fine, but you get it." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't replaceable. Harris was. Of course, not everyone was blind. One coworker, Dan, sniffed out that I was becoming Silverline's golden boy. Dan was the type who'd stab you in the back for a stapler. One day, he muttered, "Careful, Harris doesn't like when the dog starts thinking he's the owner." He wasn't wrong. But instead of getting scared, I leaned into it. Quietly, I began laying my foundation. I registered a business name, rented a tiny office space downtown with flickering lights and peeling paint, bought secondhand furniture from Craigslist. To anyone else, it was pathetic. To me, it was a fortress in the making. The perfect chance came during Silverline's quarterly review. Harris strutted in late, tie crooked, grinning like he was about to charm the room. I handled the deck. As Harris rambled about brand synergy and market dominance, I saw the executive's eyes glaze over. That was my moment. I jumped in, explained the real numbers, showed insights Harris didn't even understand, proposed bold strategies that made the board sit up straighter. By the end, their attention was fixed on me. Not Harris, me. Afterwards, Collins caught me near the elevator. "You ever think of running your own firm?" he asked. My smile probably gave me away. A week later, over lunch at a quiet restaurant, he leaned in. "If you go independent, Silverline will follow you. We trust you, not Harris." The following Monday, I walked into Harris's office with a letter in hand. He didn't even look up at first. "Finally quitting?" he said smugly. "Don't worry, you're replaceable." I slid the letter across the desk. "Not quitting. Notice. Silverline just signed with my firm." His jaw dropped. He blinked. For the first time in years, he had no words. I walked out, loosened my tie, heart pounding, phone buzzing with a message from Collins. "Welcome aboard." I didn't just steal Harris's biggest client. I dismantled his safety net. Once Silverline announced they were moving their entire portfolio to me, other clients started asking questions. If Harris couldn't keep his biggest account, maybe he couldn't keep theirs either. Whispers spread. Within weeks, 2 more clients jumped ship. His office went from the loud, buzzing place it used to be to a hollow shell with empty desks and nervous employees scrolling job boards. And Harris? Oh, he tried to call me. Begged, threatened, then begged again, but I never picked up. The last time I saw him was by chance. I was leaving a cafe after a meeting with a potential new partner. He was sitting alone by the window, hunched over, staring into a cold cup of coffee like it might save him. His tie was loose, his face pale, and for once, there was no arrogance in his eyes, just emptiness. I thought about stopping, about walking over and giving him the same smirk he'd given me when he said I was replaceable, but I didn't. I just walked past, not even a glance in his direction. Because the truth is, he was right. I was replaceable. To him. But he was never supposed to be replaced. And yet here I was, thriving with his crown jewel, while he faded into irrelevance. Some revenge stories end with fire, some with screams. Mine ended with silence. The kind that follows when someone finally realizes they lost everything. And that silence was louder than any victory cheer I could have imagined.